don't think it's on the GPS. Maybe it is now.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's been several years
I
ago.
think it knows Washington Street.
So I said, well, you go up the hill and it's kind of
I got to go this way, so I went through there.
this way and that way. I think they found it.
Morning, Mary.
There's construction going on.
Yes, I should have signed it.
We sold 14 lots
Really?
this year, and we got 5 that we just finished. So we got a lot of
It's beautiful.
please.
Can I join you?
Sure. Sit right here beside the donut.
Oh, hey, I can work my way through that in this meeting.
Andy, how you doing? You look glad to see us.
I've been down in the West for 3 weeks now, Leslie.
Oh, you're not going to do well right now. You're on a come down.
It was a road trip, so you come back right in.
Well, you came back at the right time. Okay.
Okay.
Cooped up.
Oh, okay.
I'm ready. These like here. I'm not going to get used to it.
Went to bed, right?
What kind of audience do you have? There's a camera. There's a camera.
Just started. So it's
Mohawk. Okay. I know one benefit is you probably, if you're home and you're asking questions sometimes. Be embarrassing probably.
No, I mean, the whole point about the government is it's supposed to be open.
Yes.
So.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Corps of Engineers, right? Oh, there. Go ahead and sign in after Paul there, we'll get you a seat.
Great, thanks.
And you are Jennifer? And Al?
Yep.
Good.
There's Hal Brady, good to be
Mike Morrow, Mayor.
Your mom is back there.
Yeah, somewhere in the back.
Well, we're gonna put you two right here next to Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Awesome.
And we do have coffee and refreshments over there, if you help yourself.
Would you do copies, please? Yeah. Half from
What do you want in it? Black?
probably shake anyway.
Keith, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Sign in and come on up here.
I understand.
Thank you, sir. See, we can sit over here. Good. Keith?
You're what we call a hot seat, okay?
You're not too far off.
They're both within striking
I
distance.
know.
Okay.
We do all our city meetings. People can sit at home. Yes. Okay.
I just sent you the, whatever you listen to. Okay. So if I can speeches out here, if I can start out on my truck and all of this. So we have it. We started flying, you know, it's that's that order, so flying down. And that's what we're reading. We started to start flying. All right. Awesome. How you doing? Great. Good to see you. Yeah, this is an issue to Jersey County coordinator, Keith. This is our own trip planner.
Yeah.
The lead office.
Come on in, Justin. All right, we've got,
Good morning.
all right, good morning and welcome to Grafton. And this is our annual emergency management meeting. And we held one last year where we sat down and reviewed all of our emergency plans with our emergency committee. And we worked on them throughout the year, and the books that you see in front of you, we'll go through a little bit and talk about that, but that was our product that we came up with. Purpose of today's meeting, and I invited a lot of folks to come in today, was to go through this, but also put faces to names. Come on in, Cindy. There. If you would, please sign in up there, and then we got two seats for you up here. The purpose for the meeting today is to put faces to names and to get to know each other. I know I've met Doug already, and Keith, we've worked together, snow fight and so forth, but looking forward as we go into the year, who we're going to be talking to on the other end of the phone or the radio when emergencies come up. And I'm glad to see Raging Rivers up here today and all the rest of the folks. So what I want to do is go around the room and just let everybody know we're being recorded live on YouTube. This is being broadcast live, so that's why I've got the microphone in my hand. And so we'll go around and everybody tell who you are, and at some point during the meeting, each of you are going to get to put out a speech if you want. I know I want to hear from Doug and IEMA and so forth. So let's start off with Doug here.
I'm Doug Downey. I am the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Regional Coordinator for Region 8, which includes Jersey County and obviously the city of Grafton. Was here in 2019 for the flood fight when we were here. So my job is to assist with Keith Norman, who's the Jersey County EMA Director Coordinator. My job is to assist him in getting any resources or assets or information that the city may need for any potential flooding or planning of flooding.
Good morning, my name is J.P. Ping. I'm with the Illinois Emergency Management, Region 8 out of Freedom Heights, and the staff development specialist down there. So we're concerned with training and planning.
Good morning, my name is Hal Grafe. I'm the project manager of the Corps of Engineers St. Louis District. I'm also the floodplain services manager. We have a couple of authorities under our framework that we help small communities for flood-prone assistance. So planning assistance estates, silver jackets, interagency flood risk management, and I'm an occasional liaison if an emergency comes up. I went to IEMA when COVID kicked off. I went to Missouri Emergency Management for the 2019 flood, so I pinch hit here and there as needed.
Hi, Jennifer Molman with the Corps of Engineers. I work in emergency management as an emergency management specialist. My main role right now is working with the planning as well as issuing supplies and equipment when needed.
Andy Jackson, City of Grafton, Alderman, second ward.
Donna Smith, Grafton, Alderman, first ward. Peggy O'Neill, Mayor's Assistant, City of Grafton.
Melody Dawson, I'm Administrative Manager at Raging Rivers.
I'm Jeremy Hayes, I'm the Park Manager at Raging Rivers. We're here to find out a little more about the emergency plan for Grafton.
I'm Paul Arnold. I'm, I guess, a volunteer coordinator. I guess my experience is that I've been here for every flood since 1973. So worked for the city and all the mayors since that time.
I'm Derek Russell. I'm the Chief Deputy Code Administrator and Floodplain Manager for Jersey County.
Morning, I'm Cindy Craig Miles, and I am the Jersey County Code Administrator and Certified Floodplain Manager for the unincorporated county. I also do all the permitting for ALSA, and I'm here to assist in any way that I can. I'm also responsible for doing the multi-hazard mitigation plan, which includes Grafton and other communities as well.
And I'm Keith Norman. I'm the coordinator as of last October. So I'm fairly new, but I grew up in Dow, been around the river my whole life. Remember the Norman Brothers boats. And I'm also the Jerseyville Fire Chief and EMA coordinator. And so I'm excited about some of the organization I see here. I have been around it for a long time, but never truly understood all of the pre-planning and stuff that goes into it. So my role is to help you through your plans and through the city and through the resources that are available both state and nationally, make sure that we can protect life and property in your city.
Thank you also very much. Now, one of the things as we got started, you know, the new mayor, I came on board this last year in May, and thank God we didn't have a flood then, but we started going in and doing things. And one of the things I wanted to do, because I have a history with the Corps and the military and so forth, I wanted to review the emergency plans that we have for Grafton. So I did that, and we formed a committee, an emergency committee, and we met, and the folks, the aldermen here are part of that, and a lot of the other folks that couldn't make it today, but they'll be reviewing it on our YouTube. We met and went through and updated our standard operating procedures. It's very important that Paul over here mentioned that he's been with us in every flood fight since 1973, and he's been sort of like a mentor to every mayor that's come in. And I know that when I came in, he sat down with me and he said, Mr. Mayor, here's some of the things that we have to do, and here's what you got to remember. Don't forget when it gets this high. That's when it hit me, is that we've got a lot of knowledge here that's up in this gray matter, but there's no place around that I can find it written down in a cohesive manner. So what we started to do with the committee was we had a long meeting one day where we had all the folks like Paul, and there's a lot of others with him. We invited everybody from Grafton that wanted to come. And we sat down and we recorded everything that you do when it gets to this level, when it gets to that level. Here's something you have to watch out for. All those little tweaks. And then we went and put those into a standard operating procedure. And as we'll go through this when we look at the SOP that we did, we've got pictures in there of the flood levels and so forth as we go on. So One, I'm very grateful to Paul and all the rest of the Grafton people that helped to put this together and give us the information and knowledge, and that know that your hard work all your life is continuing on, Paul, so thank you very much. The other one is that I did a lot of people going around meeting people, and I met with the Corps, met with Raging Rivers folks, Ken Handler, and all the other folks out there, and businesses in town, and met up with a good friend Keith here when he had Doug at IEMA, and we had a meeting up at the fire station going through a lot of the planning stuff. And then also Cindy and Derek up at the code administrators, and I've probably been up there maybe 4 or 5 times to just pop in to visit. But one of the things early on that Cindy talked to me about was this right here, and she mentioned it earlier, which is the Hazard Mitigation Plan 2021 for Grafton and also 5 other communities. And this is sort of the Bible that we use. So as we go through here, you don't have to duplicate things, but you just have to know where to find them in the book. A lot of good information in here, and it acts as a basis for what we put together. So thank you, Cindy, for being here today, and Derek. All right, with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the document that you have in front of you, which is the Standard Operating Procedures for Flood Emergency. Now, there's 3 parts to this document. The first one is the flood portion for Grafton, and the second one is for Chautauqua, and then Elsa, and then Chautauqua. So let's go ahead and take a look through it. Nice little cover page. But then as we go in, you've got the table of contents, the introduction, planning portion where we mentioned here that we work off of the hazard mitigation plan. That's on page 5. There's a picture of our committee at work last year on the next page as we started pulling things together. And then one of the things as we went through that we didn't have was starting on page 7 was the incident commander is appointed for an incident, whether it's going to be a flood or a natural disaster or even civil unrest. We have to have some type of organization as it falls in, and that's where we came in with that with IEMA and so forth, replicating what's already in place so that we have parallel structures set up. And so I think that comes right out of your book there, Doug. And each one of these roles and responsibilities, as you see, go through, and in some of these things that you'll notice on here, the incident action plan diagram, those come right out of the IEMA playbook. Now, when we get over to start looking at the pictures, we start what happens typically when you look on the National Weather Service. They give you little flood markers in there where it says when it gets to 23, 18, so forth and so on. Every morning on my computer, and I know the former mayors did the same thing, but especially in Grafton, we've got a key link that's set up that goes right to the National Weather Service. And I always look at what the flood level stage is. Right now we're about 16.2 or whatever. I'm happy. And as we go through, because it hits 18 and it's got that word in there that says start taking action. So with that, these photos, when we go through, we've replicated the flood levels in there, plus other ones like Paul and so forth said, well, when it gets to this level, we added all those in. Put the pictures in that we have, and we'll take more pictures as we go through the years to add into that, but what actions that you have to do at each level. And as you look through those, some of those are pretty detailed when it gets in there. Peggy mentioned the fact that one of the problems they had with our police department, not our police department, but the people cutting through Grafton Hills with these large semi-trucks. And the roads up there are not meant for that, traffic and so forth through the school. So again, that's knowledge that we put into the book, and we make sure at a certain level that Grafton Hills has to be cut off for traffic rolling through, and we have a trailer transfer point. We continue through all of those, and then the last page that we get on here for Grafton is emergency contact numbers. And I've updated some of those. If you look through those, if anything's wrong at the end of the day, just go ahead and get those to me. If there's somebody else that you want to have put in there, we can make another page. But these are the numbers so we don't have to go looking for people. Next page over is for the Corps of Engineers. Yes, Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, we need to have utility companies, like Dan and Ameren. There should be 2 different divisions for Ameren. One is electric and one is gas. Don't necessarily know what the other one does.
Absolutely, and we talked about, Andy brought that up the other day, and we did contact Ameren, and they're getting us a representative for the committee. And also we asked Dan that he's gonna be on the committee too for the American Water. Next page then goes to the Corps of Engineers, basically just the org chart. We could probably fill more as we get things into that, those that we want to put in here for Jennifer and Hal. We would like to have your ideas on that, that'd be great. All right, the next one down is emergency manual for Chautauqua. Now, part of our original committee was we brought the city of Elsa, or the village of Elsa, and also the Chautauqua in with our committee. Neither one of them can make it today. Bob Hormel is the Chautauqua manager, and he's the Elsa. And the Chautauqua manager is, I forget, but he's in here somewhere. Neither one of those can make it. Chautauqua's a vacation community, most of them are still on vacation, so. But as you notice, they go through, they've got their phone numbers and everything. We've had a meeting with them. I've also went through both of the cities with them, viewed Chautauqua, viewed Elsa, and rode with those folks, and we talked about their procedures. And then the same thing with Chautauqua here. They have also their flood plan and their local numbers, what they do. Each of their things, they have different solutions. The whole idea of pulling this together was not so that we have one command center to do that, but what we do is we know that each community has certain things to do at certain levels. So with that, what I'm going to do then is, do we have any questions on the SOP itself that was laid out by the committee? Yes, Mary in the back, and we did get your notes.
Okay, I just, from my experience in 19, which wasn't the water's coming up, it was mostly the water's going down. And what I don't see in here with the volunteer and so on is that need to have equipment on hand for volunteers, like gloves and the disinfectants, all those things, shovels, dehumidifiers, all that equipment when the water's going down. I don't see that, the water going down effort as much as the water going up. And it's not the fun part. Not that any of it's a fun part, but.
No, you're absolutely right. And Mary gave us an excellent, some feedback on the notes for shovels and so forth. She talked about it. We were going to incorporate that.
And the contacting places like Home Depot, Lowe's, all those are very willing to help, but you have to get a hold of them, get the equipment here, and then have a system to, I mean, we lost more shovels, I think. So there's equipment, coordination and people coordination would be my concern during that period of time.
On the going down, and also thank you very much. Other comments?
One of the things that I saw in your plan that might help with some of that is there's a very specific volunteer coordinator and a process to sign people in and sign them out every day. One, for their own safety. Everybody that went to go do something came back and checked out, but that might help with getting that equipment back too, if that's part of the process when they come in and check in and get supplies and do things. So I was pretty impressed with that too.
The sign out is the difficult part, and it's really essential.
Right?
Yes.
Also food.
Like donuts?
Start with donuts.
I didn't try that.
We were volunteered, who was it? Chicken sandwiches. We made more chicken sandwiches in 2 little microwaves than you can believe.
Definitely can. All right, so what I'd like to do now is let's go around the room and then we'll hear from IEMA, from their perspective. We'll just go around, everybody gets a chance to holler.
So looking at the plan is a really good plan. And one point to address your concern over there is we do, I do remember in 2019, we did have the city of Grafton request gloves and a bunch of other PPE equipment, and we did provide that. We do have a lady up in Springfield, Edie Casella. She's a private sector coordinator. She is one of our people that we reach out to, that if there's a need for any type of thing from manufacturers or stores like Lowe's, Menards, Ace Hardware, like that, she has a direct contact with all of those private sector corporations and companies, and we can always reach out to them for anything that you may need in future planning. But no, I'm happy with the plan here. It's a good plan. A lot of great work went into it.
Good morning. I also agree. It looks like a really good plan. Just a couple minor tweaks. The contact list for the Corps of Engineers, I think Jen's going to talk about that in a minute. You probably don't want to have dozens and dozens of coordinates on there, but a few key ones for emergency management, things of that nature. So I think that would be an area of improvement. And just off the top of my head, I sketched out a few things before I came here. Has the city ever thought about a tabletop exercise? Would you find any benefit with getting eyes on the material? How are you going to check it out? Food. So maybe a more robust tabletop exercise might be something to think about for future efforts. Pre-scripted message going out to all the citizens and business owners, whether it be through social media or any other forum for that. Inundation maps, if you need any of those. The Corps' got a engineering circular that we use, guidance on emergency management plans, but this covers the meat of what is in there. So I think it's a very good start.
Also, agree, great start, it's a great plan. I agree with, I believe you said Mary, maybe go through with the water receding and your steps there. The usage directory, it does need a little bit of updating, but also it might be, like Hal mentioned, it might be easier just to have the key contacts in there rather than the whole organization. Otherwise, great plan.
We do have some sheets on keeping track of volunteers and stuff, but I don't know if you have a copy of those, so
If you don't, we'll take it.
I'll give you a copy of those.
I was mostly, like Mary, involved with the cleanup phase, and there were issues with equipment. We ended up with a whole garage full of things that had been donated to us, food particularly, and at the end of the cleanup phase, we still had a ton of stuff out there in the garage that had to be disposed of. And I think if we had planned for making sure, okay, we've got enough of this stock, we don't need another 200 bushels of something or other.
How many cans of mixed vegetables do you need?
Right. I think there was enough canned vegetables to last the whole city 2 years out there, and they all had to be disposed of at the end of somebody somewhere. And keeping track of things, Mary knows, and I know that shovels, all those things that go out, and then we, so-and-so signed out for it, but, I gave it to her, and it's hard to keep track of some of that. And we really need somebody in here who's in charge of all that to make sure that we keep track of things better than we did in the last flood. Yeah,
We were here every day.
Yeah,
but
and it's an everyday process. Some days you can sit out there all day and nobody comes, and other days you're just flooded with people coming in. There just needs to be a system by which we deal with all of that.
And somewhere, and it might be the person at the state, there is many churches have disaster relief teams that have equipment, training, you name it. And once we tied into that network for the cleanup, they came with trailers full of equipment and people who knew what to do with them. So somewhere in this plan is that church network.
And the timing with awards too. Obviously my award's on top of the hill, so you don't worry about us. But there were concerns that we didn't get the award through fast enough, and they were, it's just a need for organization as that water goes down. I don't have anything to add.
All I can say is I'm very appreciative to the volunteers for the flood of 2019, because they even come out and helped us at the water park cleanup. And we tried to do the best that we could to get our stuff going, and we even had volunteers come out. So you guys are doing a fantastic job. This looks great, and hopefully we won't have to use it.
That's it.
All right, but I was trying to get rid of the stuff after the flood. In '93, I had a whole barn full of stuff. Farmers out in the country donated their space, trailer trucks come in and unloaded it. That was fine, but getting rid of it was a nightmare. Not only that, many of the organizations around the area donated money. Believe me, that is a big headache. When the city came, when the time came to do that, the people in town wanted the money. The city had to come up with some kind of, and the former mayor there, and the citizens in the town, they wanted a piece of it. And that was a big headache. I would note that you need to put one more column on your telephone numbers here. I'm also the president of the Grafton Telephone Company, or GTEC, or whatever you want to call it, supposedly, anymore. There is a lot of requests when it comes to that cleanup stage. Like in '93, we had every network, ABC, NBC, all of them in here, and they needed it. We had the string wire and cable to meet their needs at that time, so communications. Of course, you got it. My son's name on there.
The only thing I've really noticed in the plan that maybe could add the resources, what resources are needed at different stages of flooding. Because obviously if it's a smaller flood, you're not gonna need as many resources or as many people called out for that stage, but you're still gonna need cleanup and road cleanup and things like that, and more resources obviously like the 19 flood. So I don't know if maybe if you have in there different stages as to what resources get called out at certain points. Other than that, I think it looks really good.
As someone who's been doing this for a long time as well, been doing this since 1973, I am excited, very excited that we have someone that has taken a huge interest in his community by preparing a report like this. This is something that's very, very needed, and I love it that everybody is here to participate in this. Just a few things that I would like to just talk about. It doesn't necessarily have to be in here, but I think the biggest deterrent to putting roadblocks in your way is the mitigation, and that is good floodplain management, whereby you reduce your losses by making sure that those people are out and safe in a flood. Also, I was here in 19 to do all the assessing for the afterwards for the substantial damages. And it was difficult because obviously when the water starts going down, obviously the homeowner or business owner wants to go right back in, and that really creates a problem for the community itself to try and assess what their damages are when you have people going back in. So I think it's important that you may want to identify more of what your risk is here as far as structure-wise. And just to let you know that the Illinois Association of Floodplain Managers, they have a team that's called RAFT, and they're a rapid assisted flood team. And all you have to do is call, and they will send a team down for you that will help you assess your damages. And I think it would be a good contact there for you as well. Mm-hmm. So other than that, also I would suggest that you identify your critical facilities, such as the telephone company. That's considered a critical facility. So if you were able to need more space for people that need to go to that are homeless, you can always use those facilities to house them and use them for supplies as well. So usually places like assemblies, such as churches or schools, that you can use to where you can place people that are homeless or in need of a temporary place to stay and get food.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'm very impressed with not just the plan, but a lot of the comments that have come out of this. I think you've got some really good things on there. One of the things that, as far as cleanup, you were talking about the organizations and the wrong acronym, VOADs? Volunteer organizations active in disasters. And that was something that I know Larry Mead and Mike Morgan worked with those groups. Sometimes it's hard to coordinate on something like a flood because it is so vast. So it's all up and down the river. It's not an isolated event where everybody knows who needs assistance. In the case of a flood, it's pretty active, and that's definitely something that I can help with, help coordinate that. I know we had a meeting with the Red Cross at the high school, multidisciplinary,
multi-agency response.
Perfect. More acronyms for you. But that was a really good way for people. It's a regional way that the Red Cross can bring all of those organizations into one place so that people affected by the flood can go kind of a one-stop shop to get the assistance that they need, to understand the forms that they have to fill out for assistance, and a lot of that. You were talking about the coordinator for volunteers. It's also probably something that you might want to consider in your organizational structure as a donation coordinator. Because as you have products, that person can go back to your public information officer and say, tell them we don't need any more canned vegetables. Get that message out, or whatever that case may be. Or if you decide that there's considerable cash coming in, if that's addressed ahead of time with your community and they know that it's not going to be divvied up on a per person basis, whatever's left, if they know that kind of stuff ahead of time, that person can help coordinate those messages. I'm the person, and you talked about Doug, if we need anything from IEMA, I have the ability to go in online and order those supplies, whether it's shovels or gloves or masks or bleach. And you talked about Home Depot and some of those organizations. A lot of times they're getting so many requests for that stuff that it's almost better to go through IEMA so they can coordinate those large purchases. And I know with COVID, they have changed a little bit how they do that. They've actually bought a warehouse. In the past, and help me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that as things were necessary, they used contracts that were in place and other ways to obtain those things. And I would assume that they will start stockpiling supplies that will be needed for floods or other avenues that those things might be a little bit easier to get a little quicker for us. I know we've already started at a county level looking at supplies that we have on hand, and after the last flood, that's not much, if anything. So we'll have a pretty good handle on what we need. And somebody made the comment about adding, I think Derek said, what supplies you need at levels. I think that's a great idea, so that you know the things that you have to do. You need to make sure that the plan has what you need, so that if you're approaching a certain flood stage and you know you're going to need 20,000 sandbags and sand to fill them, you might want to get that ordered so it's not that point that you need them and then we're ordering them. So I think it's a very good plan, and obviously there'll be things that get tweaked and added as you go, but a very good plan.
All right, thank you. Yes, Paul.
I know what I'm going to say is impossible, but if it was ever possible for the state and the federal government to declare a disaster, because the cities have to keep a record of all the work that they've done, and when they come back after 3 or 4 months, and then they declare a disaster, the work has already been done. So I know that they've had trouble. When the guy was here, he had a lot of trouble because he's doing things and then it wasn't acceptable. Like I said, it's impossible. But if the state or the federal could ever make those declarations so that the villages would know have a better handle on what they should be keeping as far as record is concerned, because I know that was a big problem.
So, first off, the city has the authority and power to declare a disaster declaration within the city, and so does the county can do that too. And that's what starts so the mayor has the authority to do that automatically for 7 days, and then within 7 days, he has to have the approval of the city council to extend that for how many days he wants to. But that's what would start your process for identifying expenses that could be reimbursed. And on the big problem, I think, and we discussed this, I think when we were in January, that in 19, the biggest problem was document. The reason why the city didn't get reimbursed for a lot of stuff, and the reason why there was a lot of questioning, is there wasn't documentation on the damages that were being requested to be reimbursed for repair. So that was our biggest problem, was documentation that FEMA was looking for as far as what kind of maintenance was done on sidewalks, roads, streets, electrical, sewer, culverts. There was just a lack of documentation. So I know that's been changed since then. And there are records now, inspections that are completed, and photographs that are taken every time that those maintenance is done or any time inspections are done for any project here in the city. So that will help next time, if there is that time, or when, to seek reimbursement. Now, the big thing is, obviously, the state itself has to have, as a whole, we have to have $20 million of damages, uninsured loss damages, before we can seek any FEMA reimbursement for public assistance that would go back to the cities to help them get reimbursed for response and recovery to a flood. So we have to see 20 million. And the county itself has to see, I can't remember what was it like 20,000 or 25,000 or, right?
It's $4.63 per person per capita, so whatever that comes out to be for Jersey County.
Where they run into a lot of trouble is in the springtime, the river comes up and goes down.
Yes.
So they may fix it the first time, they come back and some of the records that are sent in, where you already got rock, for instance, why are you not using the rock? So it was a big problem.
Yeah. And a couple things, I know you're the volunteer donations, is that what you're?
I'm just a
Oh, okay.
He's on the committee.
Okay, all right. So the big thing here, and I know, and this is a tornado, but typical tornado that happened in a couple of years ago, they had a huge influx of monetary donations. I mean, almost $1 million. And they didn't have a plan in place to how that money was going to be divvied up or how it was going to be allocated and who would have access to that. So I'll send you their plan that they developed on how to handle monetary donations. And I'll be honest with you, most cities prefer monetary donations over actual product because it's easier to store. You don't need, I know we had a huge garage over here full of stuff, so you don't need warehouse space, you don't need space. And they could purchase what they needed at the time, and then if there's anything left over, anybody, however the city decides to disperse the remaining funds according to their plan, they can do so. So I'll say that there. But I think it would be a good idea to have that. And again, if there is a flood in the future, whoever your PIO is going to be, that's a message you probably want to get out as soon as possible. If you want to accept stuff, that's fine, but you want to have a listing of exactly what you need. I know it's been mentioned here several times, but I think most cities would actually prefer monetary donations instead, and you can have that plan in place. And a good thing about that is that money could be spent locally to help revive your economy. I know you've got some stores here that you can probably purchase stuff at that would help at the time. And I know normally the chief elected official is the PIO for the city. And I don't know, Mayor, if you want to retain that public information officer title, or if you want to designate someone, because you may be busy with a lot of other things. So you may want someone who's trained, you know, if you have a city clerk or deputy city clerk, you may want to designate them as the PIO for the city.
Well, thank you all for your comments. I've taken copious note, but also too, this is why this is recorded, so we can go back and relook at it there. Now, just a couple of things I want to go back and highlight on too is that, yes, tabletop. The question is when. Usually, you know, the springtime would be great, but as you see, a lot of our committee folks and also the other cities, they're not available. So I will coordinate that with you, and we will do one. Now, the city ourselves, we did our own little tabletop last year where Peggy, you know, she basically runs the operations. Nick, who you don't see here right now, he's my director of public works. He's in the back room with headsets on because today he's in an 8-hour class with to get his CFM certifications, and he's going to the big class up in, was it Bloomington here next week?
Yes.
And so he'll be hopefully coming back with his CFM certifications. And part of that, what we did was start out, both Nick and I went through the NFIP and so forth, and he's going to be certified. I'm a little too busy to get up there because I got another meeting at that same time. So the other part of that is, so we're working to do that. We do have, Paul, to address your question on the records. That's one of the things we talked about when we did our little tabletop within the organization here, was that even if it's starting to come up, address it like it's real. Start looking at all the things we have to do, make sure that we're GPSing locations, make sure that we're doing the records correctly, so that when it comes time for the declaration, we already have everything in place rolling. Now, we'll have to roll through and continue that, but we've already looked at that and thought about it. Also, too, I'd like to ask Keith, when you set up for your emergencies, where are you physically located?
At this point, I'm going to be at the firehouse in Jerseyville. We actually have as much or more room there than what we had at the county. So I'll be at City Hall. If we need to move to a different location or meet at different locations, we certainly can. But I know during the last flood, we met almost every morning. I was still with the school district, but active at a city level. And I know we met almost every morning and didn't have a whole lot of changes. The operational plans didn't change a lot. One of the things that I hope to be able to do in future emergencies is do a little better job of documenting what we're doing. But we had special operations from the Chicago Fire Department down. We had state and local resources through conservation and local law enforcement, and everybody was doing what needed to be done based upon years of experience. But I'm not sure that until we got the state over and more involved in it, that it wasn't coordinated like it needed to be. So, and I think that's something that the state will help us take care of, and we can do a better job. And that's another thing that I think from the look of this plan, that I think the city will use some of those forms based upon Mike's experience to document those incident action plans, and that will make reimbursement easier also. But I'll be at the firehouse in Jerseyville, the short answer.
And Doug, I'm going to ask you the same question. Physically, you know, with IEMA, that you're going to be located, where would you be located?
So, just as an example, in 2019, we actually set up an incident command in Calhoun County and actually one for Jersey County. So, in Jersey County, it was set up at the school. I can't remember what it was, but we were actually brought in an incident command trailer. So, all chief and elected officials and appointed officials who had anything to do with flooding reported to the incident command trailer in Jerseyville. And then we maintain operations for all of Jersey County from that location. So, so any place, this facility, the city hall we're in now, could actually be an EOC. So if there is a need to, if we don't have access to the command vehicles like we did in the past, we could set up operations in any city hall or in Jerseyville, the family department. But most normally, we would bring our command vehicle to one central spot and try to manage the incident from that location.
And yes, this would be our initial location where we would set up and operate out of City Hall, but if the levels get to where they were in 19 or even higher, then we're gonna have to move, and we have a plan in place to do that. We've already talked with the Rural, we've talked with some other places, but, and you were getting ready to say, tell me something.
We're also looking for a trailer.
Yes, and we're also looking for a command
Anybody
trailer.
has any ideas?
One of the things that as we talked through our tabletop here was that in my military training is you have to have eyes on. And so, you know, to be up at the grade school is a great idea because the facilities are nice and everything, but it's almost like you're on vacation. You don't know what's going on down here. So we would, right, Donna? So we would sit there and look at here first, and then possibly already talk with the Rural. We could move in down there if it's not to be that much. And then eventually we'd like to have some type of a command trailer location so we can stay close to what's going on and keep our fingers on the pulse. Let's see, I love the idea, and yes, please send me the plan for the money donations because that, it didn't hit me with that. You know, we've always talked about the canned goods and corn and all the rest of that stuff, but money's good, but we do have to have a plan in place, and we have to have it laid out, already set up with the bank where it goes in and so on. So we'll incorporate that in. The volunteers and so on for the VOADs and everything, that's great. Keith will talk more on that as it goes through. And then Cindy, on your raft teams, that's very important for us because obviously one of the things that as the waters go down, immediately we need to get out and start doing the assessments because if the assessments are key to driving everything else and getting those finished and getting them done properly so we can get people back in and get working on that. So I remember the raft from the NFIP class, but it's good to hear it again, and we'll look into that as a section on that. Raging Rivers, I talked with Ken. You know, he's the new owner of Raging Rivers and the organization, and I'm glad that you're here because you know we talked with him on how to go through the plan. And when we had the meeting the last time, the committee with Elson and Chautauqua, we had all our police officers here, our fire chief, and they're all actually, believe it or not, today busy, but that's okay because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, but we're glad that you're in here today, and if there's any questions, you know, Paul's a great knowledge on that. When the river road closes, you know, there's nobody to be swimming, so. Do I have any other comments or questions? Let's give it to Andy down
here. Yeah, I brought up the issue of minor flooding, which obviously we luckily have a lot more often than the 19 issue. But the problem that we've had in the past, and it's a real issue, is when you get 5 or 6 inches of water on West Main Street, and it becomes a point where you need to shut it down. The mayor has the authority and ability to close Illinois Route 100 when the water comes up, you know, to whatever depth you feel unsafe. But then when it, you know, a day later it goes back down, well, guess what? The mayor doesn't have the authority to reopen Illinois Route 100. So it can be high and dry before IDOT ever gets, you know, down here and decides that, oh, okay, it's, you know, there hasn't been any damage to the road and it's okay to open it up. So I think that is a more recurring, more common issue that we've had to deal with multiple times over the last few years. And so I really wish that we could add an IDOT representative to our list of, you know, people like Cameron and you know, telephone companies and the like. So it's a major type of person that we need to be in communication with so that we can have a plan so that the mayor can both close and reopen the road, you know, when it becomes necessary to do that.
Yep.
Mayor?
Yeah, Mary, go ahead. You're under the microphone.
Right. I'll be careful.
No, go ahead, speak.
Is in your PR plan, made me think when Andy suggested it, we have a PR problem in that if we say at 18 or 20 feet it's flooding, that really means that, you know, the turtle's underwater kind of thing. All our businesses are open and so on, but the local, especially the St. Louis stations, radio and TV and newspapers have headlines that say Grafton's closed, it's flooding. And so to have that in the PR plan, I've got in my garage 3 great big signs that we put around saying Grafton's open. And so that's an important part of a PR plan, that while we're fighting minor floods, our businesses are open and ready to serve people.
Very good point. I always remember that photo of the reporter standing like he's in front of the sign, at the stop sign that's almost covering the stop on it, but everything else is open. It's just down by the river. So we have to be careful with that.
And I think one of the things that can help with that is crafting those messages now, and having those communication templates of, what you guys understand what minor flooding in Grafton is, but I'm not gonna drive here from St. Louis if where I wanna go is closed. So if you can draft those messages ahead of time, so that you're not trying to do that and have all of that in this manual, I think that will definitely help.
I was just gonna say that in the hazard mitigation plan, there is contact information for IDOT and other resources that you can use.
And is that something that, if they're having an issue, that I can request the assessment through WebEOC?
Yes.
So.
To open it, we need to open it.
Right.
Yes.
And that way, it's documented through the state process, and IEMA can help us get an engineer down here to get your road inspected and reopen. I would seriously doubt that they would ever give the mayor the ability to reopen the road without the engineers looking at it. But I think through IEMA, we can kind of stick them with a fork and get them down.
Thank you. Dan, would you like to come up and say something on behalf of American Water? I know we're adding him to the emergency committee along with our other utilities folks that Andy talked about earlier.
Really don't have anything. I mean, it looks like a good plan to start with.
Yeah. All right, good, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes, Dan over.
Now that I got the core here,
There you go. You got it.
I've noticed since over the past years, the level of the river, normal level of the river has changed. You're holding it at a higher level, 16 to 61. It used to be 14.5, then 15, now it's 16. Is the long-range plan is to continue raising the level?
That's a good question that I'd have to ask our water control and get back to you.
2 feet. That's 2 feet.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
It's been holding at 16.12 here on a steady basis, so I know you're holding it there. Maybe it's, I just was wondering if the long-range plan is to continue raising the level. That puts us in a bigger disadvantage.
Any other comments from Richard? Do you have any comments? Richard Mosby's the winner. He was with the mayor back then and on one of these big floods, and actually you weren't the mayor at that point, but you were in charge of the damage assessments, was that right?
Yes.
Yes. You want to say anything on that?
No.
He's a man of few words, okay. All right, anybody else?
That's something about you guys looking for a trailer. I don't know if it needs to be mobile, but our display center there at the park would be open to anything when it comes to emergency for like any bodies access if we needed to help out. So anything we could do at Raging River is good.
That's very good. We'll take a look at that. Yeah.
It's on the level of the water.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
At 28, 29, you can't get to it. It's
Right.
cut off
There you
too. We're back in the air though.
And just so you know, in Region 8, there are 2 Unified Area Command Post mobile vehicles that are at your disposal. We didn't use those during the flood, but we could request those. They can fit about 15 people comfortably in it that could be stationed anywhere. So we have access to those.
While we're speaking on that, that's great, 'cause I'll put that down and I'd like to come see those. But the other thing, as far as communications, now most of it through landline, I would imagine, but if we're talking about something like a tornado or something else, are we talking about communications through our police department, or how do you plan that then? I'm sorry. Communications. Typically, we communicate through the phone, telephone, but with IEMA and so forth, and even with Keith. But if we have the phone lines that go out,
Mhm.
we have a tornado, they're down or something, how do we communicate? Is that through our digital police department radios?
So, we have a radio system called Starcom, which, your police department, I assume should have, but I know.
They're no longer,
They're
they're no longer.
Okay, so I'm Starcom. But we do have, in our office, we have about 50 portable radios, Starcom radios. So if there's a need for communications, we could bring those radios here in chargers, and we could communicate that way. And so all responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS, EMA could use those.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming out today, and we will be setting up a table exercise with folks and get everybody down at some point this year, or maybe late in the fall to do that, and review at that point our other portions that we put up into this plan. So thank you all for your comments, and everyone have a great day. Turn off the thing. There's coffee and donuts.
Yes. And tell me, I'm Mary Elizabeth, I'm an alderman, and also chair of our